Well, it's Friday the 19th of July. Standing outside the Peace Palace, the International Court of Justice has just issued its advisory opinion on the so-called Israeli prolonged occupation of the occupied Palestinian territory. And in this video, I want to just give you a kind of an overall sense of what the court has decided. What is the significance of what has been decided today, and we'll think a little bit about some of the implications. First of all, we need to understand that the opinion that was issued today is the result of a long process which has led to here, actually over the last 100 years. Ever since the fall of the Ottoman Turkish Empire in 1918, the end of the First World War, and the idea that the Jewish people would have a homeland in Palestine, from that moment, a part of the Arab Palestinian society, the more radical part, has opposed the very idea that the Jewish people could have self-determination and autonomy in what they consider to be exclusively Arab territory. Okay, I won't go into the history, but the Jewish people belong in the Middle East. They've always been one of the most important people groups in the Middle East. And this idea of a Jewish homeland was not strange, but was just to recognize that their birthplace was the territory that later became known as Palestine. But for the Jewish people is Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. Now, the Palestinian rejection of that idea is exactly the same rejection as we've seen in the court over the past year. The Palestinians and the Arab states and the Islamic states with them came to this court with the claim that the Palestinians are the true and only owners of Palestine. They don't mean the occupied territories, they mean from the river to the sea. They deny the validity of the mandate for Palestine and the Jewish national home. Now, the next step in their reasoning is to use the law of occupation and the law of self-determination to achieve their goal. So the whole case was crafted around the choice of questions that the General Assembly put to the court. The court was kind of restricted to the questions that the General Assembly put, and those questions were very much around Israel's violation of the Palestinian right to self-determination and its violation of the law of occupation. And the court was simply asked to give an opinion about the legal consequences of those violations. Now, the court says, well, we don't just assume that, we will study the matter, but in doing so, they relied upon all these UN documents which reaffirm the Palestinian claims and deny any single Israeli claim whatsoever to the territories. They even deny in the United Nations the validity of the Jewish homeland under the mandate. So that is the context within which the court has issued an opinion today. So what has the court decided? Well, basically it's decided three things. First of all, it says we start the historical and legal analysis in 1967. In June 67, Israel took these territories in a defensive war against the Arabs. They say from that moment Israel was an occupying power. They look at the law of occupation. They say that under the law of occupation, you're not entitled to annex the territory, you're not entitled to claim the territory as your own, you're not entitled to impose your own legal system. You have to give that territory back to the original owners. So secondly, they say, who are the original owners of this territory? The Palestinians. They have a self-determination right, which is effectively a right to sovereignty over natural resources, a sovereignty right to the territory. So the Palestinians suddenly, according to the court, become the legitimate owners of this territory because of the principle of self-determination. So they are the two main things, the law of occupation and the law of self-determination, leading thirdly to this claim in relation to sovereignty. Now what this does is ignores everything historically and legally that happened prior to June 1967. What happened in June 1967 is that Israel was defending itself against yet another aggressive war of the Arab states to eliminate it. Judge Sebutindi, in her dissenting opinion, explains this extremely well the history leading up to 1967. And an important part of that history is that the State of Israel was created in 1948 in Palestine. The territory of the State of Israel was intended to be Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, which was Palestine west of the Jordan River. That's extremely important because the Palestinians rejected on several occasions. Judge Subatendi also looks at these rejections from 1937 onwards, right up to 1947 and beyond. They reject two-state solutions. So when Israel was created, it was created in the land of Mandate Palestine, and under the principle of uti possidetis juris, which is the principle that's really determined the borders of pretty much half the countries in the world that have emerged from mandates or trusts or colonies or administrations. The new state takes on the boundaries of the prior regime. Well, the State of Israel took on the boundaries of the mandate for Palestine. That means that when Jordan occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem for 19 years and destroyed every synagogue, every Jewish person was removed from the territory, Israel still had a valid and legitimate claim to that territory. So in June 67, when Israel took back the territory, it was taking back control of territory to which it already had prior sovereign claims. And Israel asserted those claims in relation to Jerusalem. So the court is saying today that East Jerusalem does not belong to Israel. Now, we believe this is contrary to international law under this principle, and for many other reasons. Historically, Israel has a sound and a strong claim to sovereignty over the whole city of Jerusalem. And by the way, recent polls show that the Arabs in East Jerusalem prefer to live under Israeli sovereignty than under a future Palestinian state, because they know it's a secure state. So these are the sovereign claims of Israel, which the court has ignored in these advisory opinion proceedings. Secondly, the court has ignored the broader context of the conflict. It has completely ignored Palestinian terrorism, Arab terrorism, the influence of Iran in the region. It sweeps aside Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is also in the West Bank. Israel is fighting for its existence against regimes that are not just trying to kill people, they're trying to eliminate the state of Israel. None of that in this opinion. You would think, if you heard this opinion, that the Palestinians and all of them, and the Palestinian Authority and the PLO and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad want nothing more than a peaceful state living in coexistence with Israel. Well, if you read even the PLO claims in the court here, the so-called State of Palestine, they're not just claiming the West Bank, they're claiming all of Palestine from the river to the sea. So we are afraid that this decision is going to play into the hands of those who are out shouting on the streets for Palestine. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. Israel must be eliminated. Israel must be destroyed. This is the context within which this advisory opinion is taking place. So finally, what is the consequence? What are the implications? Well, this is an advisory opinion, 15 judges of the court. It is not a binding decision. The court has made orders, it has reached conclusions. Those conclusions are directed to the General Assembly, and effectively the court is saying, well, now the ball is in your court, General Assembly, Security Council, to decide what you do with these legal findings of ours. They say that every state in the world is obliged to ensure that Israel withdraws from the whole of these territories as rapidly as possible. And the question is up to the General Assembly to decide what that means and how it should be effectuated. What we're going to see is an explosion of the BDS movement, boycotts, divestments, sanctions against Israel. We are going to see an explosion of anti-Semitism. This is an affirmation that Zionism is illegitimate in the eyes of many. those who are hostile to Israel will use what is said here to advance their extremist claims. This is now going to be a political decision. Every member state, and maybe we just finish with this, but every UN member state has its own responsibility to make its own independent determination of what international law says or does not say on these questions. And we invite the member states, we invite legal advisors, we invite all those who engage this issue to study this seriously, read Judge Sebutindi's dissenting opinion, read also the separate opinions and declarations by other judges. You'll see that the issues are much more complex and nuanced than the court has presented here. And it's very important that we take a look at the conflict and the role of international law in relation to the conflict in historical perspective. We cannot sweep history aside. Yes, we can look at the Palestinian claims. Yes, the Palestinians have a right to autonomy. Yes, we wish them an independence, but you cannot do that at the expense of a sovereign member state of the United Nations. Thank you very much.